So I've been a fan of The Walking Dead since about 2013 when it started really blowing up around season 3 or so. So over time I caught up with the show and I started getting invested, and I got to a point where I was like, okay, I think this is one of my more favorite shows now. But over time, I hate to say it, but the franchise has deteriorated for many different reasons, and I can't explain them all in this video right now because I'm going to save it for a separate video. However, when that day comes, I will break down and analyze all the goods and bads and all my experience with The Walking Dead over time. But I wanted to make this video today to start off with a review for their new spin-off series about Daryl Dixon. If you don't know this, the main Walking Dead show has ended on its, I think, 11th season. And they were about to set off a bunch of spin-offs to really continue the franchise because they couldn't keep dragging on that main series. So they decided to split one of the spin-offs into a Daryl Dixon spin-off. I'll admit, I initially didn't give a fuck about this show because I don't see any reason to enjoy this show. I'm like, what? Daryl goes to France? How? All he's going to do is walk around and be like, I'm Daryl. I'm looking for Rick. And grunt and moan and bitch or whatever and kill hundreds of zombies or whatever. It's going to be boring. It's going to be boring having him walk around in France for, 8 episodes? Well, in spite of my prior judgment to that show, I turned on the TV, I watched the first episode, and you can call me a fucking idiot, but I actually kind of enjoyed it. I'll separate this video into 2 parts. There'll be the non-spoiler review right here at the beginning, and then there will be a spoiler review afterwards, and I will let everybody know in the video where that is. So I watched the first episode of Daryl. What are my thoughts? I didn't mind it. I thought that there was a decent story to be had here, even if the story is kind of, I'm not going to lie to you, a ripoff of The Last of Us. But here's the funny thing, is that they don't disrespect Daryl in any way. There's a lot of intrigue about how Daryl got to France and what his goal might end up being throughout the series. There's actually some sort of intrigue that keeps you going, keeps you watching the show. And I'm like, you know what? I've been missing this from Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead for a long time. So maybe I'll tickle this and find out what kind of treasures lie underneath. The acting is pretty good. I'm going to say the acting is pretty solid. The makeup, the effects, all still on point. Still on point from the main show. The script takes its time with some things. However, that first episode really does set up a lot of stuff very quickly and very efficiently, which I can appreciate. So that was nice work on their part. The editing was a little weird here and there. Nothing big on that. I was concerned about some parts of the story, though, that were like, they mentioned some things and then they forgot some things. Some things happened and then they weren't mentioned again. It was kind of bizarre, but I feel like it was not that big a deal in hindsight. Is this show woke? No, I don't think it's woke. Will it get woke? I mean, there's more than one episode, so maybe we'll find out. But overall, I didn't absolutely despise it, which I thought I was going to fucking hate this show. I thought I was going to hate it from beginning to end. But you know what? I had a good time. I was like, you know what? Daryl's killing walkers. I'm actually interested in why he's there and what he's doing. I found a lot of the new characters kind of interesting. I found a lot of the stuff that they mentioned in the show to be, not in any way sort of offensive to the fans. It felt like an intelligent show written by adults who care about the fans. It's kind of a good thing that AMC took the risk by, getting the SAG-AFTRA people to sign off on letting this show continue to film and promote itself so that people could actually see maybe something good will come out of this. I'm willing to suspend my animosity and a lot of my gripes towards the Walking Dead franchise to see if this show is actually good and worth a recommendation. It's only been 1 episode, so I can't recommend it right now, but I will say I enjoyed it. I actually kind of enjoyed it. So that's a good thing. That's a very good thing for them. It's something they desperately need at this moment when their franchise is on death's door. It's basically a zombie, pun intended, because that's what it is now. So this is where I'm going to get into a few spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show and you want to see the show now, click off this video, come back later, and we'll go through the spoilers together. But this is where I'm going to the spoiler section right here. You've been warned. So the show opens up right where trailers sort of led us to believe. It's Daryl on a boat, just like passed out on a boat, floating until he gets to a beach. It's kind of weird that he picked up like a little beach bucket and drank whatever was in there. It could have been a bucket of piss and he would have just guzzled it down his throat. But it ended up being fresh water, I guess, so he drank it. So then Daryl walks around for about 10, 20 minutes doing exactly what I thought the show was going to be. I was just sitting there groaning, oh, he's going to be walking around and grunting all the time. Oh, this is what the entire show is going to be. A couple minutes in, he comes across a couple of, I guess, farmers. I don't know, French scavengers. I don't know. He can't understand them, so he's trying to learn French by using a translation book that he found. Turns out these people were scammers because one of them was a blind guy that was like, oh, I can't see because I lost my eyesight in the war, but he said it in French. So oddly enough, a couple of mercenaries show up, and these mercenaries have muskets, which I thought was kind of interesting that they had muskets in the zombie apocalypse. You don't see a lot of that these days in the zombie apocalypse. But they were like, hey, we're speaking in French, but we're obviously bad guys because one of them hit the girl. Daryl says, fuck that, and he kills the other guy, but then he gets shot in the neck by one of the muskets. It's kind of weird that he survives that. I don't know if he was shot in the neck or the shoulder, but like, it was weird that he got shot and nobody mentioned it again. It was so bizarre because it turns out that when he was wounded and he killed the two mercenaries, the farmer girl and the blind man that were scammers come up and are like, hey, we're going to take all your stuff now. But then he's saved by some shadowy figure that he saw earlier on in the episode when he was walking around. This shadowy figure turned out to be a nun who was at an abbey not too far away. She took Daryl in. I guess she carried his body back to the abbey. I mean, women power, am I right? But once they got back there, Daryl was healed up by all the nuns. Well, I forgot to mention earlier on in the episode, he fought off like 18 walkers who had acid blood, which was bizarre, but interesting. I'm interested to see what this acid blood zombie thing is about because the acid burned his arm and got him wounded. After this nun takes Daryl back to the abbey, they heal up his arm. I guess they heal up the neck that was shot because it's never mentioned again. Like he's just shot in the neck and nobody ever mentions it. I thought that was probably one of the dumber things and weaker parts of the show, to be honest with you. But he goes to the abbey and we see him learn what the abbey's about. It's a group of mostly nuns. It's all female nuns. No men were allowed there. But there was a guy named Father Jean, I believe, who was the leader of the place, I believe, at the time. He was in a secret, sort of his own little area. And there was a little boy, Laurent, who was running around. So Daryl was like, thank you for the hospitality. I'll be on my way out of here sometime soon. Thanks for all that. Daryl meets Laurent, which is where this plot sort of picks up after explaining the world building here and explaining where everything is and establishing things as we know them. Laurent, this little child, copies Daryl's movements when he's eating and drinking in one scene. So that was kind of bizarre. Whenever Daryl meets Laurent in person, we find out that this kid has been educated very well by the nuns. And he's very intelligent and he's kind of interesting. He's an interesting little kid. But you'd think nothing of it. You think he'd be just an annoying little kid until he mentions a quote that Judith says in the main Walking Dead show. Judith said, "You deserve a happy ending too," to Daryl. Laurent says this same line, which was bizarre. Daryl's trying to find a way to reach this radio that they have so he can phone his way out of this abbey because a lot of the nuns don't really want him there. When he finds out that there's a walker, there's a zombie in one of the walls, he's like, okay, I need to go kill this thing right now. But he finds out that Laurent is sitting there talking to him, reading scriptures and singing songs to the zombie. Turns out that zombie was Father Jean, who was the one guy that was there. Daryl's like, what the fuck, guys? What the hell? Why are y'all keeping a walker and having this little kid, preach to him? After Daryl's like, nope. Daryl's like, nope, fuck that. This is witchcraft, all right? I'm out, bye. Which is something that Daryl would probably do. He would probably say fuck that and leave. If not, just kill the zombie. We find out from the nun that saved him that Laurent is a really special kid. And I mean, like, really special. Like, I mean, not in the, oh, I'm a Disney Star Wars fan kind of special. Like, there was a prophecy from a Buddhist monk that came to their monastery that said that this little child was going to be the new Messiah, the savior of humanity. I shit you not. That is literally what they said. Daryl's like, what? So the nun that saved Daryl goes through a whole monologue explaining Laurent's sort of, purpose in the world. He doesn't really know that he's supposed to be the next Messiah. And Daryl's just like, okay, this is all weird and stuff. I don't know what to think about this. But she's trying to convince Daryl to take Laurent upstream to northern France so that he could lead society to a better world. It's basically The Last of Us, but with little baby Jesus child and grunting Daryl instead of Joel and Ellie. So that is a really bold concept that could either be really interesting. Like, imagine this is a story about Daryl finding God. Maybe it's about him finding hope. Some sort of, it's a Daryl white pill show, right? On the flip side, this could be a mega sacrilegious, disgusting display of fuckery from people who are, I'm going to be honest with you, kind of woke behind the scenes. This first episode, they didn't, there was one moment in this episode where they were like, the nuns taught themselves how to fight, which is a little tad bit of intersectional feminism, but there is a history behind nuns learning how to fight. That's an actual thing. So I was like, you know what, I'll let it slide because that's a historically accurate kind of thing. I imagine that's something they would do, especially in a zombie apocalypse. So the story is about Daryl trying to take this kid to a new, safer place away from the monastery, from the abbey, and basically let him live out the prophecy of being little baby Jesus. It's a bizarre story, but you know what? It's better than most of what I'm seeing these days. Not gonna lie. It's an interesting thing to take Daryl this direction to see that, well, maybe this is a story about Daryl finding God, which is a really interesting thing to do, and I'm kind of digging it. So we find out that the mercenaries who attacked Daryl early on in the episode have a leader who looks like off-brand Russian Negan, right? And he's like, you killed my brother. I need to find the man that killed my brother. So he uses one of the scavenger scammer people. He kills the blind man, takes the girl back to the monastery, and is like, okay, show me where the American is. Because Daryl's like the only American around. He's like, they identify him as the American. So when they get there, all hell breaks loose. They get there like the mafia, like how Negan and the Saviors used to do. Daryl immediately spots this danger and is like, okay, we need to protect the child. We need to take these assholes away from the nuns. And so a whole fight breaks out and the nuns go into battle. And one of my favorite parts of this episode, like one of the things that made me laugh my ass off, was when the mercenaries with muskets that are like musket guns show up to a group of nuns that only have melee weapons. They just stand there and look at each other until the mercenaries just blow their heads off. I was just like, it was like Indiana Jones, shooting that one guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was like, well, no shit, I have a gun. Might as well shoot this melee person. But the nuns, they kicked some ass too. They got in there and they beat up a few guys and, it was big brawl going on. So after all that, the main nun, the main mother, passes away from a wound that she had from one of the mercenaries. The bad guys get away, but at the very end of the episode, Daryl finally realizes, you know what? After all this destruction that I've seen today, I think I'm going to take this moment to find a purpose. And I will take this child, Laurent, where you need me to go. Just tell me where to go and I'll take him. So at this point in the episode, you might be asking, wait a minute, how the fuck did Daryl get from America to France? Which is something a lot of people are going to be wondering and what I will be wondering as well. And so whenever he was asked that in the show, the nun that saved his life was like, how'd you come to France? And he's like, bad decisions. I'm like, that's it? That's all you have to say? Fuck's sake. However, the bright side of this, much to my surprise, and a good thing, by the way, that in the scene before the credits or post-credits scene, we find out that Daryl was imprisoned on a giant ship that was leading to the harbor area that he's supposed to be taking this kid Laurent to. He was imprisoned there while he was in America. And they were basically setting up a bunch of mercenaries trying to hunt down Daryl in France. Because he caused a lot of problems on this boat before he was, thrown off the ship. So what we have learned from watching this show so far in the first episode, Daryl has this new mission, a goal to take this kid to somewhere safe so he could be nice little zombie Jesus. We understand the world of what the Walking Dead world is like in France, who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, and there's a little sprinkle of intrigue on that. Well, maybe we might get the answer as to why Daryl came from America to France. Because I thought that was going to be a question that was not going to be answered at all. It might actually be sprinkled throughout the series. So overall, I didn't hate this episode. I was like, this is a pretty solid start. I'm actually invested in this kind of show. And props to Norman Reedus. I mean, I don't particularly care for him as a person outside. I mean, I think he's kind of a decent guy, but his politics are fucking all over the place. But besides that, he puts in a good job. Like, this is the most characterization I've seen out of Daryl in a long time. Because I remember when Daryl was just like, oh, I'm Daryl. I'm looking for my dog. And he was just grunting and didn't do anything, right? But he really stepped up as an actor. He really stepped up as an actor in this show. And I'm really proud of him for that. And I'm kind of digging it. I like where this is going. I like how this is being handled. So good on AMC. Good on the Walking Dead family. Make me care again, guys. Make me a fan again. And hopefully this will lead to something with Rick. I really hope it leads to something with Rick, because we have been starved of Rick for too fucking long. Anyway, first episode of Daryl, pretty good. I liked it. Let's keep it up. Let's keep it up, AMC. If you like what you heard today, if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm a fan of The Walking Dead, so hopefully this will be something that pays off in the future. So, guys, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe again. Do what makes you happy. Don't smoke crack. Enjoy your day. I mean, I hope The Walking Dead really does turn a new leaf here. It was really good.